Good morning, everyone. Can you please bow your heads and pray with me? Dear God, thank you for blessing this great nation. Thank you for the men and women that have sacrificed for our freedom. Bless their families. Thank you for blessing our leaders. Thank you for the education and training we received here at Gordon Cooper to better ourselves in our future. Open ears to hear the message that you have for us today. In Jesus' name, amen. Clarence Prevost was born in Texas. He went to the University of Prairie View in Texas, and he has served 23 years in the United States Navy and retired as a captain. He has now worked at Gordon Cooper for 16 years. Please give it up for Clarence.
Thank you, and good morning to you. Good morning. Thank you. We're here to recognize and to honor the people we call veterans. And you ask yourself the question, you may ask yourself, what does it mean to be a veteran? And I read an article from the New York Times a few weeks ago, and the conversation was to a U.S. citizen, but he's a veteran of the Army. And I read the article, and I thought about what does it mean to be a veteran today, and how does the veteran see the world, and how does he see it or she sees it from the aspect of the time that they served. He said, I was a soldier and I went to war, and by I became known as a veteran. My civilian career progressed, my family grew, and the Army drifted into the gray mist of memory. But the experience of the military services leaves an indelible imprint on the psyche and the soul of each soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine. And so he wrote these tidbits that I kind of captured. He said, what does it mean on a day-by-day basis to be a veteran? And this veteran says this. He wrote down a few things that I could relate to. He says, Advil is a narcotic of choice for a bad back, creaky knees, both earned by an invisible Purple Heart. I can relate to that. He also wrote that watching the evening news and feeling guilty for not being beside the soldiers fighting in the story seems to resonate with him. He wrote also, finding a lump in my throat and tears welling in my eyes when I see images of a crying mother or wife folding a flag into a triangle and being presented for a fallen comrade still resonates with him. I was called a CACO, a Casualty Assistance Call Officer, and I've officiated many funerals and visited many homes of fallen soldiers, sailor, airmen, and Marines. That was my duty, to meet their parents and to meet their loved ones and to let them know with a face what it meant for their loved one to have served. He also says, as a veteran, we feel slightly self-conscious at our child's grade school on Veterans Day, but also feeling important. You know, when you get your name called and your face flashes up on Veterans Day at your child's, in my case, my grandchild's grade school, you feel a little uneasy. You feel that you only did what you were called to do, but at the same time, you feel honored to be recognized. He said, finding the term hero just a little bit applied too liberally. We use that term in a loose terms. We use it very loosely, and the only heroes that he can remember is Artie Murphy for his old folk, and he was a hero. We were only soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that did our job. He said that also having a cracking, faltering voice when speaking of certain wartime events triggers strong emotions. No matter how many times he speaks of those events. I have an uncle who's a World War II veteran, and he fought in the trenches in Germany, and And it seems like every time I spoke to him about what he did and how he did it, he'd have this faraway look in his eyes, and he'd speak as if he were still there, reliving the times in the trenches, reliving the times in wartime. I have a brother who served in Vietnam. He has that same look, the same look of a combat veteran, the same look of one who has seen things and heard things that no man or woman should ever hear. But yet, when they spoke of them with pride, and they spoke of them with dignity. They remember forever being identified as a military person based on solely the fact of how they stood, how they walked, how they spoke. When someone can say, I can see you've been in the military, I see you served, based on the fact of how you stand, how you walk. And we still feel a surge of engulfing pride, like a warm shiver when the American flag passes or during the singing of the national anthem. It brings something out in you, particularly when you're serving across seas and you see that flag unfurled on the sands, on the grounds, on the shores of a foreign country and a foreign land, and yet you see the United States flag just flying proudly and lit up bravely, and it still brings a sense of pride. Many of us, or many of them, still grasp the knowledge that peace is eminently more precious than a state of war, regardless of what the reason. The veteran knows the cost of peace firsthand, and that cost has a first name, that cost has a middle name, that cost has a last name, that cost has a social security number, that cost has a wife, a husband, a child, a friend, a community. Peace has a face. Peace has a name. Peace has a community. And for a moment with me today, let's look at some of those faces of a veteran.
I was in the United States Coast Guard. When we got close to the beach, I dropped the ramp, and the machine guns cut down 15 kids. You know, for 70 years, I never talked about it. It's like a big weight that I've been carrying around. Now I want to talk about it.
I was an Army captain.
I was a navigator.
I was a Marine combat officer.
I served in World War II,
Iraq,
Afghanistan,
Korea,
Vietnam.
It's important for people to hear these stories, not just to understand why and when and where we send our sons and daughters to go and fight, but also in helping us to come home.
There's a very stark line between before boot camp and after boot camp.
It's basic training. Life sucks.
I would stop thinking I was going to die. I couldn't take another step.
hurry it up! You felt kind of invincible.
When you're in an aircraft the size of a CH-53 Delta, you definitely know when you're falling and not flying. I came to, and there's just chaos.
Bombs going off, bullets whizzing by my ear.
I volunteered for missions. It was just too exciting.
Beware what you wish for. Don't wish for that one cool firefight to say that I lived through it and I did it.
It's pretty exhilarating when you're able to get out there, effect your rescue, and get home.
Exhilarating or not, war is an ugly thing.
The draft was inevitable. I wasn't thrilled about being in the military, but it's what you did.
Veterans were shunned.
People didn't understand, what are we doing in Vietnam?
I did everything in my power to stop that war. The truth doesn't make you free, it compels you to action.
I saw sexual assault cases swept under the rug.
Are you a homosexual?
Don't ask, don't tell.
I had a double life.
I'm 20 years old, and the first time I was integrated was in a POW camp. That's a sorry commentary, but that was the truth.
My first shot, I stepped out of the box and threw up.
The first time I shot somebody in Korea, he was walking on the ridge line, and I had a clear shot at him, and I fired.
Even though you're back home, it's like, I'm going through another culture shock.
I miss my ship. I miss my shipmates. Took me a long time to adjust.
You just feel better off not talking about it. As a matter of fact, my kids didn't even know I flew till they were teenagers.
You know, we're professors, we're firemen, we're mayors. We work at Home Depot, we deliver the mail. I mean, we are your neighbors.
My time in the military confirmed for me who I thought I was. Someone who would be very bold in my language and my perspective, who would stand up for the little guy.
I represented the whole country. And you know what? That's still who I am inside.
These are the faces of the United States veteran. And you ask yourself, you may think about why did they serve? Why did I serve? We didn't serve because we were red or blue, Republican or Democrat. We didn't serve because we were conservative or liberal. We served because we were Americans. We served because we were committed to a cause and a call, a response to the call for liberty. We served because somewhere we were taught one person, one man, one woman can make a difference. We serve because of family, we serve because of duty, we serve because of country. And we serve because in every branch of the service, each one drills and instills in us a creed that many veterans still carry with them today. For the Army, the creed is, this will defend. For the Marines, it's always faithful. For the Navy, it's not self, but country. For the Air Force, it's aim high, fight, fly, and win. For the Coast Guard, it's always ready. We left home so that we can come back to one that was better than it was when we left it, believing that our leaving and returning made a difference in the world and in the homes that we left behind. Let me share something with you here that was given to me some time ago. I think the young lady already said that I am a 23-year veteran of the United States Navy in my service to this country. And I have a family history of World War II veterans, Korean War veterans, Vietnam and Desert Storm vets, and relatives, nieces and nephews that are currently serving in the United States Navy in the United States military on active duty, representing every branch of the service. So I believe that I qualify and I understand what patriotism is. Patriotism. That being said, it has become my observation that when our flag is presented, our military becomes front and center at that moment. And we put emphasis on our military prowess. I too am grateful and to have had honor to have been part of the best military in the world and that the history has ever seen. However, I believe I see more than a symbol of a military machine when I look at this flag. I see the entire face of the United States of America. I see the faces of everyday patriots. I see the school teacher working tirelessly, building our future citizens. I see stay-at-home and single moms and dads. I see factory workers. I see factory workers making things and of relevance to make our lives easier. I see plumbers, I see carpenters, I see nurses, I see coaches, I see healthcare workers, cashiers, custodians, comedians, oil field workers, and engineers. I also see the retirees who gave their best to their family, their community, councilmen and bankers, races, creeds, and cultures of all kinds when I look at the United States flag. I see all who make and keep this nation great. So when I honor the flag, when I honor the veterans, I honor all those who are doing what God gifted them to do, even those whose gift is simply to live and be present to bring joy to the lives of others. When we see ourselves in our flag, when we see ourselves in our country, when we look at our veterans, I believe we see our strength is more than just our military might. We see ourselves as part of the whole, and that is what makes this country great. We see each other as diverse as we are, but coming to one as a whole. I think it's unimus pluribus, out of the many, one. Our diversity, individual contributions, and voices are embellished in that United States flag. It is not our military that draws people to our country. It is the opportunities that our citizens create in themselves. And so, you have a video? Okay.
I would like to take this time to recognize the service members of the past and the present. When I call your branch of service, please stand. Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and Coast Guard.
Do we have any veterans present? Let's give a round of applause for those even if they're not here. Before Clarence finishes, I'm going to do a little part with him, talking about our family stories, and he's mentioned his rich history. So I'll share you a little bit of mine and then give you an encouragement at the end. So my family story, I am not a veteran, but my grandfather was. He served in World War I, known as a doughboy. For those that are at the aviation campus, I'll bring this down so they can hear me also. So my grandfather served in World War I, 1914 to 1918. He volunteered, went off to training, and then was deployed into France, where he served in the muddy trenches of France, experiencing the very worst parts of war, to the point that when he returned to the United States, he would not speak of it, other than to say that he was a veteran and that he served in World War I. And that is the war that this day was established on, originally called Armistice Day. On the 11th day, on the 11th month, the 11th day, which is today, and the 11th hour, which we're about a half hour away from reaching that point of anniversary. He willingly gave his service to our country, although it was not what he wanted to do. It was what he felt like what he was obligated to do. My father then joined in World War II, 1941, a few weeks after December 7th at Pearl Harbor, and joined the Navy, where he went to basic training. There are some of his fellow guys training. Can y'all pick out who my dad is? It's the guy with the Superman curl. You see him? That's my father. He finished his basic training and was deployed to a ship called the USS Blue Ridge. Coincidentally, Clarence also served on this ship a couple of generations later. It was a communications flagship of the amphibious fleet, and so they participated in every Marine Army amphibious landing in the South Pacific. Iwo Jima, all of those. There he is standing on board ship, and then when the war ended, his service did not end. He spent another year in Japan establishing radio communication sites for the occupation forces and the rebuilding forces that would enter thereafter. He's the guy sitting right down here on the bottom working the radio. By the way, he's the one who taught me my electronic skills, and that's why I became an electronics teacher here years and years ago. And when he finished his year of occupation, then he returned home as a veteran. So I want to encourage each and every one of you, while you still have parents and grandparents that are in this world, and uncles and aunts, maybe some great-grandparents, to visit with them and learn their story. Because when they're gone, that story may disappear with them if you've not taken the time to learn it and to appreciate the things that they've done for their family, their friends, and their country.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. How many of us know a veteran? You all do. So today we recognize our veterans of our armed services, and today we want to welcome them home. We call out their names and we see their faces, faces that if you look deeply tell a story. Mr. Ferris encourages us to do that. If you look a little bit more deeply, their faces tell a story. It tells a story about the homes that they left and the homes they came back to. Home. Home has a different meaning to the veteran, particularly the war veteran. So I'll leave you with this. On duty in Naval Station San Diego, I was boarding in an American Airlines flight. And the American Airline pilot came across the PA system to announce that today we're going to have a special guest on board. He said, "Will you please look to your left of the plane?" And as people began to pile to the left side of the plane, we noticed being loaded into the cargo area was a flag-draped casket. And as the casket began to be loaded on board the plane, it was deathly silent in the cabin. I began to hear sobbing from a lady that sat next to me that day, and with her was a 4 or 5 year old little girl, and as she began to sob almost uncontrollably, the little girl asked, she said, "Mom, why are you crying?" Her mother said that, "Sweetheart, I'm crying because we get the privilege of seeing a hero go home." Home has a different meaning. Home has a face. Home has a address. Home has a meaning. And so he's going home, or she's going home. We don't know who or what was, but what that moment did for me, it helped me remember that we get the privilege as veterans of coming home. And when we come home, we have stories that are hidden oftentimes behind faces that teach, faces that preach, faces that work as bankers, accountants, oil field workers, police officers, nurses, physicians, a lot of faces with stories. And it behooves us to use moments like this and days like this to look into those faces, and just for that moment, look deep enough to see there's a story there, a story that talks about home, a home that God has blessed, a home that God has given us, a home that is free because of the brave. God bless you and God keep you. Look at a veteran today and find out what their stories is. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and participating with us this morning. You are now dismissed to return to your classes. Thank you.